The Academy of Human Defense was a place that hummed with tension even on ordinary days. Its walls were sleek metal, dotted with observation windows and flashing consoles. Students walked through corridors with careful precision, each step measured, each expression serious. The Academy trained the best human minds, preparing them to face dangers no one outside could imagine. Today, the air felt different, thicker, heavier. There was a sense of anticipation. The final exam, known only as Identify the Threat, was about to begin. Arya walked through the hallways, clutching her tablet to her chest. She was small in stature, with sharp brown eyes that seemed to notice everything, even the details others missed. She had always been quiet, sitting in row 3 of every class, observing rather than participating. Many thought her shy. Few realized she simply preferred to watch and think. Today, her calm eyes held a flicker of curiosity and a hint of determination. The examination hall was massive, a dome of polished steel and floating holographic screens. Rows of students filled the seats, all buzzing with nervous energy. Arya found her usual spot, row 3, center. From there, she could see both the instructors on the stage and the holographic projection screens that hovered mid-air. The chief instructor, a tall man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, stepped forward. His presence commanded attention, and the hall went silent. "Today," he began, "you will face the final test of your training. Identify the threat. Remember, the obvious is not always the truth. The true danger is often hidden in plain sight." The students shifted in their seats. Whispers floated across the hall as they exchanged theories and predictions. Arya remained silent. She did not speculate aloud. Her mind worked differently. While others focused on what seemed threatening, she studied small details, the flicker of a holographic display, the pattern of a simulated alien's movement, the slightest hesitation in an animation that suggested hidden intent. A low hum signaled the start of the simulation. The room darkened slightly, and the holographic display expanded into a 3-dimensional cityscape. Buildings towered in glass and steel, streets crisscrossed with vehicles, and miniature human figures moved through the urban landscape. Then, alien shapes appeared, hovering crafts, sharp and angular, some glowing with strange energy. "Identify the target that poses the greatest threat," the instructor's voice echoed through the hall. "You have 10 minutes. Decide carefully." Almost instantly, the room erupted into activity. Students typed furiously on their tablets, swiping, zooming, marking, and analyzing. Many eyes focused on a large alien vessel hovering above the central plaza. It was heavily armed, its weapons flashing, its size dominating the simulation. Most students were certain this was the target. Arya, however, did not move immediately. She studied the scene quietly, her eyes darting from one detail to another. Something felt off. The large vessel was obvious, but her instincts whispered that the true threat lay elsewhere. A smaller ship had appeared near the outskirts of the city, its movements subtle and deliberate. It seemed harmless, almost like a maintenance drone. Yet she noticed its trajectory intersected with key energy points in the city, locations that could cause massive destruction if manipulated. She leaned forward slightly. Her finger hovered over the selection panel. Most of her classmates were confident, their fingers selecting the large vessel without hesitation. Some even murmured to each other, comparing answers. Arya's heart beat steadily, not with fear, but with focus. She had learned long ago that the world rarely rewarded the obvious choice. Observation, patience, and careful reasoning were far more valuable. The timer ticked down. She studied the smaller craft again, noting its subtle oscillations and energy readings. It did not behave like the others. While the big vessel seemed aggressive, the small one moved with intelligence, as if testing the defenses of the city before striking. Arya finally made her decision. She tapped the screen, selecting the small hidden craft as the true threat. Around her, the room filled with chatter. Many students glanced at each other, confused or uncertain, seeing that someone had chosen differently. Some frowned, thinking Arya might be mistaken. Row 3 was usually quiet, and her deviation startled a few of her peers. The final seconds of the simulation approached. The instructors watched silently from the stage, their faces unreadable. Then, with a sharp pulse of light, the simulation progressed. The students' selected targets activated. The large vessel fired its weapons, releasing a dramatic display of energy that shook the holographic city. Many students watched in triumph, confident their answers were correct. Then came the shock. The city began to collapse in places the students had ignored. Buildings near the small craft crumbled, energy lines exploded, and chaos spread rapidly. Those who had focused on the obvious threat saw their choices fail spectacularly. Panic and disbelief spread across the hall. Arya stayed calm. The collapse confirmed her observation. The hidden craft, the one she had noticed but everyone else had overlooked, was the real threat. Its subtle presence had gone unnoticed, yet it controlled the critical points in the city. Every movement, every action had been deliberate, designed to fool the unobservant. When the simulation ended, the room was silent. Students stared at the display in shock, realizing their error. Whispers of confusion and doubt spread across the rows. The instructor's voice cut through the murmurs. "Well done, student in row 3, he said, his eyes briefly meeting Arya's. "You have correctly identified the true threat. Observation and understanding are the keys to survival." A few heads turned toward her. Some stared with admiration, others with disbelief. Arya felt a quiet satisfaction but said nothing. The test was not about praise. It was about truth, about seeing what others could not. After the exam, the students were debriefed. The instructors explained the reasoning behind the simulation. The obvious threat was a decoy, designed to test reflexes and common assumptions. The real danger often comes from small, overlooked sources that manipulate events silently. The lesson was clear. Human survival depended not on brute strength alone, but on intellect, careful observation, and independent thought. Arya listened quietly, absorbing every word. She had always known that paying attention to details mattered. The world, she realized, was full of hidden dangers, and those who failed to see them would stumble. Yet she also understood something more profound. Humanity had the potential to overcome these challenges, not through sheer power, but through clever thinking, reasoning, and vigilance. As the students filed out of the hall, Arya lingered for a moment, looking at the holographic display of the collapsed city. She thought about the patterns she had observed, the choices others had made, and the small craft that had nearly gone unnoticed. She felt a quiet confidence. If humans could learn to see beyond the obvious, to understand the subtle truths hidden in the chaos, they could face any challenge, even those that seemed impossible. Her thoughts were interrupted by a voice from behind. "Row 3, the instructor said. "Report to the observation room. There is a matter we wish to discuss with you." Arya nodded silently. She did not smile, though a flicker of curiosity and anticipation shone in her eyes. Whatever awaited her, she was ready. She had seen the hidden truth once, and she knew that seeing what others missed was a rare and valuable skill. In a world full of distractions and deceptions, that skill could make all the difference between survival and destruction. As she followed the instructor through the hallways, Arya glanced back at the simulation room. Around her, students talked excitedly, some still recovering from the shock of their mistake. But she focused ahead, thinking about the lessons learned and the challenges yet to come. The exam had tested their perception. The real test, she suspected, had only just begun. And as the doors to the observation room slid open with a hiss, Arya felt the quiet thrill of anticipation. In row 3, unnoticed by most, she had identified the threat others could not. Tomorrow, the world might demand the same of her, and she intended to be ready. The observation room was quieter than the exam hall. It was smaller, with walls of transparent metal that allowed a panoramic view of the Academy's central courtyard. Holographic screens hovered mid-air, displaying simulations, maps, and streams of data. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and warm electronics. Arya followed the instructor inside, her steps light but deliberate, her mind focused. 2 more instructors were already there. One was a woman with dark hair pulled into a precise bun, her eyes sharp and calculating. The other was an older man with a calm demeanor that hinted at decades of experience in strategy and intelligence. Both regarded Arya with an intensity that made her feel both important and tested at once. Row 3, the first instructor began. We have watched the exam closely. Few students have ever observed as you did. Most were distracted by the obvious threat. You noticed what was truly dangerous. Arya nodded quietly. She had expected praise but did not seek it. She only wanted to understand. The exam, the second instructor continued, was designed to teach more than observation. It was also about judgment, perception, and understanding subtle behavior. The real world is more complex than any simulation. Today, you proved that you can see what others cannot. Arya's eyes flicked to the holographic displays. Even now, she noticed details that others would overlook. The small glitches in the simulated alien movements, the energy flows across the city, the way certain structures would collapse under precise interference. She understood patterns that most students could not. You are being considered for a special assignment, the older instructor said. One that may require your skills beyond what the Academy usually demands. But first, you must complete further simulations. Your abilities need refinement before you face the real challenge. Arya remained calm, but her heart beat a little faster. She had always wanted to contribute in meaningful ways, to help humanity in ways that went beyond mere training exercises. The chance to apply her observation skills to protect people from real danger filled her with a quiet resolve. The next simulation began shortly after. This time, the holographic city was more detailed. Buildings stretched higher, and alien ships moved with greater intelligence. The instructors explained that this scenario was not just a test, but a training exercise in real-time decision-making. The universe does not give second chances, the first instructor said. You must act quickly, observe carefully, and identify threats that are not immediately obvious. Students immediately began analyzing the new scenario. Most focused on the largest, most visible alien vessels. Arya, however, scanned the smaller patterns, the subtle movements that suggested reconnaissance and data collection. She noticed an unmarked vessel, even smaller than the one in the exam, moving near critical energy stations. Its size and design suggested it was harmless, a support craft rather than a fighter. But her instincts told her otherwise. As she observed, she began to see the pattern. The smaller craft was testing defenses, recording human responses, and targeting locations where a single attack could cripple the city's power grid. She tapped her tablet to mark it, making notes in the margin. Trajectory aligns with central power nodes, likely primary threat. Large ships are distractions. Around her, students debated loudly. It has to be the big one shouted. It's armed, it's dangerous, and it's obvious. The small ship can't do much. Others nodded, convinced that brute force was the key. Arya remained silent. She did not need confirmation from anyone. The simulation escalated. Lights flashed across the cityscape as the large ships fired upon buildings. The students who had chosen them watched triumphantly, expecting success. But then, subtle explosions appeared at other locations, places the others had ignored. The city's energy grid began to fail. Transportation networks shut down, and minor structures collapsed. Panic rippled across the holographic scene. Aria's predictions proved correct. The small vessel was indeed the real threat. It moved with precision, striking key systems while avoiding the attention of all but the most observant. She calmly activated the defensive protocols she had devised in her notes, redirecting energy and neutralizing the small vessel's attempts to disrupt the city. When the simulation ended, the instructors reviewed the results. Once again, most students had failed. Their focus on obvious danger had blinded them to the true risk. Only Aria had identified and countered the hidden threat successfully. "You see," the older instructor said, his voice calm but firm, "the real challenge is not always the enemy in front of you. It is the one operating in shadows, manipulating events while others are distracted. Humanity has survived this long because it can think, adapt, and act wisely. You demonstrated all of these qualities." Aria nodded. She understood the lesson well. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy in terms of brute force. Other civilizations might have superior weapons, faster ships, or advanced technology. But humans had something no one else could replicate: ingenuity, intuition, and the ability to see what others missed. That advantage, she realized, was their greatest weapon. After the debrief, Aria returned to her room. She did not speak much on the way back, lost in thought. She replayed the simulation in her mind, analyzing every movement, every decision point. The instructors had praised her, but she knew that praise alone would not prepare her for the real threats waiting outside the academy walls. That night, she sat at her desk, reviewing the data she had collected. Charts, graphs, and holographic projections filled her screen. She studied the subtle energy patterns of the small vessels, comparing them with known alien technologies. She noticed a recurring motif: intelligent stealth, precision targeting, and indirect influence over human systems. It was as if these aliens understood strategy deeply and used subtlety over force. Aria's thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on her door. She looked up to see her roommate, Lyra, standing there. Lyra was taller, confident, and talkative, the opposite of Aria in many ways. "You were amazing today," Lyra said, her eyes wide. "Everyone else missed it completely. How did you know the small ship was the real threat?" Aria smiled faintly. "I just watched carefully. The obvious is often wrong. You have to look at the details, the things others ignore. Patterns reveal the truth." Lyra shook her head, still impressed. "I wish I could see like that. Most of us just react to what's big and flashy. You see the invisible." Aria's smile faded slightly. "Seeing the invisible is only the first step. Acting correctly is the next. And in the real world, mistakes can be costly." Lyra nodded, suddenly serious. "Do you think this is just training? Or is something really coming?" Aria didn't answer immediately. She had thought about that possibility. The Academy's exercises were always designed to reflect potential real-world scenarios, and if these simulations mirrored reality, then humanity might soon face threats far more dangerous than what they had practiced against. The next day, Aria was called to the strategy wing of the Academy. There, she met a team of senior strategists and analysts. They spoke quickly, presenting real-time data of alien movements beyond the solar system. Scouts had been detected approaching human territories. Their actions were subtle, almost invisible, but the patterns matched those she had identified in the simulations. "You will lead a small observation unit," one of the senior strategists said. "Your task is to monitor these alien scouts and report threats before they can act. Most of your peers are unprepared for this level of analysis. We trust you because you have shown the ability to see what others miss." Aria felt a surge of responsibility. This was no longer a simulation. Real lives could depend on her decisions. She understood that mistakes now could cost billions. Her team was small, but capable. 2 analysts skilled in data interpretation, a communications specialist, and a pilot experienced in reconnaissance maneuvers. Together, they would monitor the incoming alien presence, identify threats, and advise command on how to respond. As they prepared for their first mission, Arya reviewed the simulations again. Every detail mattered: the speed of alien movements, the subtle energy emissions, the potential targets for disruption. She knew that humanity's survival depended not on the largest weapons, but on careful observation, critical thinking, and swift, accurate action. Her mind returned to Row 3, where she had quietly watched while everyone else assumed the obvious was correct. That perspective had saved the simulation city. Now it might save the real world. Arya's gaze hardened with quiet determination. The exam had taught her one thing clearly. Humans were at their best when they thought carefully, observed closely, and acted decisively. The galaxy was full of threats, some obvious, some hidden, and she would be ready for both. As the sun set over the academy, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Arya prepared herself. Her mission was only beginning. The real test was coming, and for the first time, she felt the full weight of what it meant to be humanity's eyes and mind in a universe that rarely showed its hand. The observation deck of the Academy overlooked the dark expanse of space, scattered with distant stars that twinkled like fragile jewels. Arya stood by the viewport, her eyes scanning the holographic display of alien scout movements. Unlike the simulations, this was real. Every decision could affect entire colonies, lives that stretched across human space. Her team sat at a semicircular console, glowing with soft blue lights. Tessa and Ryan, the analysts, pored over streams of data, comparing alien movement patterns with historical records. The communications specialist, Jalen, monitored long-range transmissions, listening for signals that could reveal intent or technology, and Arya, as the leader, pieced it all together, observing, deducing, and predicting. "Scouts detected in Sector 12, Tessa said, pointing to a cluster of tiny ships moving with unusual speed and precision. "They're avoiding normal patrol routes. Almost like they don't want to be seen." Ryan frowned. "Pattern matches the last simulation. Small ships, subtle behavior, but capable of critical disruption if unnoticed." Arya leaned forward. Her eyes traced the trajectory lines of the scouts. "Exactly. These aren't the big, flashy attackers. They're testing us, mapping human responses and targeting infrastructure in ways most humans wouldn't notice." Jalen spoke, his voice steady. "We've picked up intermittent signals. Not typical communication, more like data pulses. They're gathering information, perhaps scanning defenses." Arya nodded. "Then we must anticipate their next move. Not just react. Humans survive because we adapt faster than anyone expects." She tapped her tablet, marking potential targets and escape routes for civilian colonies. Every calculation was crucial. A wrong move could mean disaster. The team worked silently, each member focused on their task. In the calm of the observation deck, tension hummed in the air like static electricity. For Arya, the stakes felt heavier than any exam or simulation she had ever faced. This was not practice. Mistakes now could cost millions. "Row 3, a voice called over the comm. It was the chief instructor, speaking through the deck's intercom. "You've handled simulations with skill, but reality is far less forgiving. Prepare for field observation. You will accompany reconnaissance vessels and report in real time. Observation alone is not enough. You must act to prevent mistakes before they happen." Arya exhaled slowly. She had anticipated this, though it brought a mixture of excitement and pressure. She looked at her team. "We need to stay sharp. Patterns matter more than size. Watch for small details, energy pulses, subtle course changes, timing of maneuvers. They will tell us more than any weapon display." The team nodded, readying themselves. Soon they boarded the sleek reconnaissance craft, swift, maneuverable, and equipped with advanced sensors capable of detecting energy fluctuations invisible to the naked eye. The engines hummed as the vessel lifted from the Academy, gliding smoothly through the orbital lanes toward Sector 12. Once in deep space, the scouts' positions became clearer. Tiny dots moved with precision, sometimes splitting into multiple smaller paths, avoiding patrol drones and sensors. Many humans aboard the Academy's defense stations had overlooked them entirely, assuming the largest threats demanded attention. Arya studied the scout patterns, noting a subtle rhythm. "They're testing reactions," she said softly. "Not attacking yet, just mapping defenses. But if we misjudge, they could strike where it hurts most: power grids, transport nodes, civilian sectors." Tessa pointed to a cluster near a mining colony. "If they reach this location unnoticed, a single disruption could halt production and cause cascading failures." Arya's mind raced. Every pattern she had analyzed in simulations applied here, but reality added unpredictable variables. "We need to anticipate, not react. Adjust our trajectory. Intercept without direct confrontation. We do not engage aggressively unless absolutely necessary." Ryan frowned, studying his console. "I'm seeing what looks like cloaking fields. Some of the smaller ships are invisible to our long-range scanners. Only by observing energy shifts and subtle gravitational distortions can we track them." "Then we watch closely," Arya said. "We don't attack what we cannot confirm as a direct threat. But we prepare. Patterns will reveal intent." Hours passed in careful observation. The scouts moved like shadows across the void, probing human defenses with surgical precision. Most humans would have panicked at the thought of a large fleet approaching, but Arya saw the truth. The real danger was small, intelligent, and patient. Suddenly, a scout veered toward a colony's energy hub. It moved silently, its craft tiny against the black backdrop. Tessa gasped. "It's heading straight for the reactor." Arya's fingers flew across her console. "Plot an interception course. Do not engage directly. We need to block without triggering a fight." The team followed her instructions. The reconnaissance vessel glided smoothly between the scout and the energy hub, projecting a subtle energy barrier designed to confuse and redirect the alien craft. Sensors showed the scout hesitate, then veer slightly, its course disrupted. "Pattern confirmed," Arya said, eyes narrowing. "It reacted to indirect pressure. They test, they probe, they adapt. If we act recklessly, we risk escalating into a real conflict. But patience and strategy, human traits, can prevent that." The scout retreated, moving toward a less populated area. The team exhaled, relief washing over them. For now, the threat had been neutralized without combat. As the craft returned to orbit near the Academy, Arya reviewed the data again. She realized something profound. Humans had survived not because of raw strength, but because they could think, adapt, and predict. In the presence of larger, faster, or more technologically advanced adversaries, careful observation and strategic action were the real weapons. The instructors were waiting when they returned. They watched as Arya presented her analysis, pointing out patterns, potential threats, and strategies to protect human colonies. "You understand more than most," the chief instructor said, his voice calm but impressed. "Most humans would see the obvious danger and act impulsively. You see the hidden, act with intelligence, and avoid unnecessary conflict. This is the essence of survival, our greatest strength against superior forces." Arya nodded, keeping her expression neutral. She had learned this lesson long ago. Recognition alone was not enough. Action, careful and deliberate, was what mattered. That evening, she walked alone on the Academy's observation terrace. The stars stretched endlessly above, a vast canvas dotted with possibilities. She thought about the scout movements, the subtle patterns, the mistakes most humans would make under pressure. The universe was full of danger, often unseen, often underestimated. But humans had something rare, the ability to notice, understand, and act wisely. Her reflection was interrupted by a quiet chime in her earpiece. It was Jalen. "Commander Arya, I'm picking up unusual signals from the scouts. They're not just probing, they're learning. Their maneuvers are adapting to our observations." Arya's gaze hardened. "That confirms it. They are intelligent. They test, observe, and adjust. We must stay several steps ahead. This is not about strength. It's about anticipation." She turned back to the stars, feeling a mixture of resolve and responsibility. Humans were clever, adaptable, and patient. They could survive because they could think, not just fight. But thinking alone was not enough. Action guided by understanding was the difference between survival and disaster. Over the next days, Arya led her team through multiple observation missions. Each encounter revealed more about the scouts' methods, how they avoided sensors, tested defenses, and exploited overlooked weaknesses. And with each observation, Arya refined strategies for human responses, demonstrating that intellect and foresight could counter even superior technology. Her reputation grew quietly. Within the academy, whispers spoke of the student in row 3 who could see threats invisible to others. She did not seek recognition, but her work saved colonies, preserved resources, and prevented unnecessary panic. Humans began to notice that victory did not require overwhelming firepower. It required insight, patience, and courage, the qualities Arya embodied. By the end of the week, the team had mapped nearly half of the scouts' activities. Each encounter reinforced a simple truth. The obvious target was rarely the true danger. Humanity's advantage lay not in weapons alone, but in minds capable of observation, reasoning, and decisive action. Arya stood once more on the observation deck, looking at the distant stars. The universe was vast, full of potential threats, yet also full of opportunities for humans to prove their ingenuity. The scouts had tested them, but humans had responded with intellect and strategy. And that, she realized, was the real essence of survival, of being human in a galaxy that often underestimated the strength of thought. She smiled faintly, a quiet sense of purpose filling her. Row 3, she thought, had always been the best vantage point, and from that seat, humanity could see far more than others ever imagined. The silence of space was deceptive. From a distance, the alien fleet seemed orderly, almost peaceful, drifting across the stars. But Arya knew better. Every subtle movement, every slight adjustment of their paths spoke of intelligence and intent. The real danger was not always obvious. Arya's team was aboard a reconnaissance vessel, skimming along the edge of the fleet's approach vector. The smaller scouts moved in patterns they had already studied, but today, something felt different. The fleet's movements suggested coordination beyond the usual probing. "Commander Arya," Tessa said, pointing at a cluster of readings. "One of the smaller ships is heading toward a civilian transport hub. Its behavior is more aggressive than before. It's almost like it's testing our response to direct action." Arya studied the data. The small ship was maneuvering skillfully, almost like it anticipated their surveillance. She noticed a subtle energy fluctuation, just enough to indicate a high-capacity weapon, hidden, ready to strike if undetected. "Plot an intercept," she ordered. "We do not engage recklessly. Block it without escalating conflict. Precision matters." The vessel's engines hummed as they adjusted course. Sensors projected a subtle energy field in the ship's path. It was not an attack, but a gentle obstruction, an invisible hand nudging the scout away from the civilian hub. The alien craft hesitated, its course shifting just enough to avoid the barrier. "Pattern confirmed," Arya said. "They test, we respond, but we must remain calm. Reaction without observation is dangerous. Jalen monitored communications, his fingers flying across the console. I'm picking up data streams from the fleet. They're learning from us. The scouts adapt faster than expected. Arya nodded. Then we stay unpredictable. Human strategy is not just reaction. It's anticipation. They must never see all our moves. The next several hours were tense. Each encounter with the scouts was a dance of observation and adjustment. They probed. Arya's team countered subtly, avoiding direct conflict while preventing harm. Every success reinforced a lesson she had learned long ago. Intelligence, patience, and careful observation often mattered more than firepower. Then the situation escalated. A large vessel appeared beyond the scouts, a ship unlike any they had seen in simulations. Sleek, angular, heavily armed, yet not immediately aggressive. Its presence alone was commanding. Arya's heart quickened. This was no scout. This was the main threat, the real enemy that the fleet had hidden behind its smaller ships. "Sir," Ryan said, pointing at the readings, "the large ship is coordinating the scouts. It's the source of strategy. If it acts, it could disrupt multiple colonies simultaneously." Arya's eyes narrowed. "We must find a way to neutralize it, or at least prevent it from targeting civilian systems. But direct attack is too risky. We don't know its full capabilities yet." The team worked quickly, analyzing the ship's energy emissions, scanning for weak points, and predicting its potential actions. Every pattern they observed suggested the vessel was intelligent, calculating, and adaptive. A frontal assault could trigger catastrophic responses. Arya took a deep breath. "Then we use what humans do best: strategy. We cannot match them in raw power, but we can outthink them. We'll redirect their focus, isolate the scouts, and neutralize the real threat indirectly." The plan was delicate. They projected false energy signals, suggesting that a nearby asteroid field was a potential human installation. The scouts, guided by the main vessel, diverted to investigate. At the same time, Arya's team used precision energy barriers to block their approach to actual colonies. The large vessel observed, calculating, adjusting. Arya watched the data, noting its responses. Every prediction had to be perfect. A misstep could reveal their plan and provoke an aggressive strike. Hours passed, and the tension mounted. Each adjustment, each countermeasure was a test of human ingenuity against alien intelligence. The team remained calm, relying on analysis, observation, and trust in Arya's decisions. Finally, a subtle shift occurred. The large vessel, misled by the false signals, altered its trajectory toward an empty sector. The scouts followed, leaving the human transport hubs and colonies unharmed. The strategy had worked. Arya's plan had neutralized the threat without firing a single weapon. "Success," Tessa whispered, relief in her voice. "They've been diverted. No systems harmed." Arya allowed herself a small nod. "Not victory yet," she said. "We've delayed them, but we've also learned more. Their strategy is clever, but humans can match it if we remain calm, observant, and creative." The team returned to the academy, where the instructors awaited them. "Row 3, the chief instructor said. "You have demonstrated precisely what we hoped for. Observation, analysis, and indirect strategy. These are the skills that will protect humanity. Most would have engaged in direct combat and risked catastrophe. You outthought them." Arya met his gaze. "Strategy is more than reaction. Humans survive because we see what others do not and act wisely. Force alone is not enough." The instructors nodded. They had seen it before. Few humans possessed such insight. Most relied on obvious solutions. But Arya had proven that intellect, patience, and subtlety could achieve results impossible for brute force alone. That evening, Arya walked along the observation terrace, looking out at the stars. The fleet had been delayed, but not destroyed. She knew it would return, perhaps with a more aggressive plan, but she felt confident in humanity's ability to adapt. Strength lay not only in weapons or numbers, but in the human mind, the capacity to think, observe, and act with intelligence. Her thoughts were interrupted by Tessa's voice over the comm. "Commander, I'm still seeing residual scout signals. They've learned from our actions. We need to anticipate further adjustments." Aria's gaze hardened. "Then we stay one step ahead. Humans survive by thinking, adapting, and anticipating. We will not underestimate them, or ourselves." As the team prepared for further missions, Aria reflected on the lessons of the past days. The obvious danger, the large ships, the flashy weapons, was rarely the true threat. The real danger was subtle, intelligent, and adaptive. But humans, armed with observation, reasoning, and strategy, could counter even the most cunning adversaries. She smiled faintly, a quiet confidence settling in her chest. The scouts had tested them. The main vessel had challenged them, but humans had responded not with rash aggression, but with careful thought and decisive action. The galaxy was full of threats, but it was also full of opportunity for those who could see, understand, and act. Row 3 had once again proven its value. From that seat, Aria had observed what others missed, predicted what others ignored, and acted where others hesitated. Humanity's strength was not in size or firepower. It was in ingenuity, insight, and the courage to make the right decision, even when the obvious choice seemed safer. As the stars stretched endlessly before her, Aria felt a quiet sense of purpose. The fleet would return, perhaps stronger, perhaps more aggressive. But humanity had survived before, and it would survive again because it could think, adapt, and act wisely. And in the vast darkness of space, among the shadows of alien intelligence, the student in row 3 knew one thing clearly. The real battle was not just against weapons or ships. It was against complacency, oversight, and underestimation. Humans, when at their best, could see what others could not. And that was a power no alien fleet could ever match. The Academy's observation deck was quieter than usual. Outside, stars stretched endlessly, distant and beautiful, untouched by human hands. Inside, the hum of consoles and soft clicks of keyboards filled the room. Aria stood at the center, reviewing the latest scans. The alien fleet that had threatened human colonies was still out there, but their patterns were clear now. The scouts had learned, adjusted, and retreated, leaving humans a chance to prepare. Her team had worked tirelessly for days, analyzing every movement, every subtle fluctuation of energy from the fleet. Each member had grown stronger, more precise, and more confident under her guidance. They had learned to anticipate alien strategies, to act with intelligence rather than force, and to stay calm when others would panic. "Commander," Tessa said, pointing to a data cluster. "The scouts are converging toward a neutral sector. They appear to be regrouping. No aggressive actions yet, but their coordination is improving." Aria nodded. "Good. That gives us time. Time to prepare, predict, and control the situation before they can threaten human systems." She tapped her tablet, overlaying possible trajectories of both scouts and the main vessel. "Humans survive because we think. The larger the threat, the more we must rely on insight rather than weapons." Jalen, monitoring long-range communications, chimed in. "I'm picking up pulses from the fleet. They're testing human responses again, but they seem cautious. Perhaps they've realized we're observing patterns." Aria allowed herself a small smile. "Exactly. Intelligence does not act blindly. We must continue to observe, adapt, and act in ways they cannot predict." The team prepared for another mission, this time moving closer to the fleet to observe its activities directly. Aria led them into space aboard the sleek reconnaissance vessel. The stars outside were calm, but the tension inside the ship was palpable. Every small movement, Every adjustment to the sensors could reveal the alien fleet's intentions or mislead them. As they approached the fleet, Arya noticed something unusual. A small signal, almost imperceptible, flickered from a distant sector. It was subtle, easily overlooked, yet she recognized it immediately. It was a trap. The fleet had learned from previous interactions and was attempting to draw humans into a false sense of security. "They want us to follow," she said quietly. "This signal is a distraction. The real threat is elsewhere. We stay calm, we observe, and we plan." Her team nodded. They trusted her judgment. Over the past missions, Arya had repeatedly demonstrated that careful observation and strategic thinking could counter even superior forces. Hours passed as they analyzed the fleet's movements. The scouts moved in patterns designed to confuse, while the main vessel remained distant, studying human responses. Arya noticed a subtle alignment of energy emissions, indicating that the fleet intended to strike multiple human colonies simultaneously, but not yet. Timing and precision were their advantage. "Commander," Ryan said, frowning at his console, "the main vessel is sending out coordinated signals. They're targeting key infrastructure across several colonies. If they act together, the damage could be catastrophic." Arya's mind worked quickly. She had one chance to act without initiating direct conflict. "We create a diversion," she said. "Redirect the fleet's attention away from populated areas. Use subtle energy barriers, false energy signatures, and controlled feedback to mislead them. Precision and timing will be critical." The team sprang into action. Tessa projected subtle energy waves across a nearby asteroid field, creating the illusion of human installations. Jalen manipulated long-range communications to suggest defensive positions in empty sectors. Ryan fine-tuned sensor readings, exaggerating weak points in isolated areas. All of this was designed to mislead, not attack, keeping human lives safe while maintaining the advantage of observation. The alien fleet reacted as Arya predicted. Scouts diverted toward the decoy targets, leaving the actual colonies untouched. The main vessel hesitated, analyzing the changes, attempting to determine if these were real threats or false readings. Arya's team remained calm, observing, adjusting, and anticipating every possible response. Finally, the fleet retreated. The scouts returned to distant sectors, and the main vessel moved away, no longer testing human responses. The danger had been neutralized, not by force, but by strategy, observation, and careful decision-making. When the team returned to the academy, the instructors were waiting. They greeted Arya with a mixture of admiration and respect. "Row 3, the chief instructor said, "you have done what few humans could. You led your team through real danger, identified the true threat, and protected human colonies without direct conflict. Observation, intelligence, and strategy, these are humanity's greatest weapons, and you have proven them today." Arya nodded, keeping her expression neutral. Recognition was not her goal. Saving lives, understanding the situation, and acting wisely, that was what mattered. Yet a quiet satisfaction filled her. She had seen what others could not, acted with intelligence, and guided her team to success. That evening, she walked along the observation terrace, looking out at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before her, full of potential threats, but also full of opportunities for humanity to prove itself. The scouts had tested them, but humans had responded with thought, patience, and ingenuity. A soft voice called her name. It was Lyra, her roommate, who had come to watch the team's return from the observation deck. "Arya," she said, "they're talking about you everywhere in the academy. Everyone says the student in row 3 is extraordinary. How do you stay so calm when everyone else panics?" Arya smiled faintly. "I don't panic because I observe first. The obvious is rarely the whole truth. Patterns, details, and understanding, these guide the right actions. Humans survive not by rushing into danger, but by seeing clearly and acting wisely. Lyra nodded slowly. You make it sound so simple. But most of us can't see what you see. Then we learn, Arya said. We watch, we listen, and we think. That's the difference. And that's why humanity has survived in a galaxy that often underestimates us. Later, in her quarters, Arya reviewed the data once more. Every detail mattered: the scouts' movements, the main vessel's signals, the timing of their retreat. The universe was full of challenges, subtle and hidden. But humans had something unique: intelligence, creativity, and the ability to adapt. That advantage, she realized, could protect countless lives if used wisely. The next morning, the Academy held a ceremony to recognize the efforts of those who had contributed to the mission. Instructors, analysts, and cadets gathered, celebrating not weapons or battles won, but strategy, intelligence, and foresight. The chief instructor spoke. Humanity's greatest strength is not in technology alone, but in thought. Observation, understanding, and careful action are what make us capable of surviving threats that others would find overwhelming. Today, one student in row 3 demonstrated this better than anyone. Arya has shown that humans, at their best, are capable of seeing the unseen and acting decisively to protect their world. Arya stood quietly at the edge of the platform. She did not seek applause, but she felt proud, not of recognition, but of what had been accomplished. The colonies were safe, the fleet delayed, and humanity had once again proven that intellect and foresight could triumph over raw power. As the ceremony ended, Arya returned to the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before her, each one a reminder of the vast universe and the challenges it held. She thought about the exam, the simulations, the scouts, and the main vessel. Each step had been a lesson. Humans survived because they observed, adapted, and acted with intelligence. That was the true power of humanity. She sat quietly, looking at row 3 in her mind. That seat, often overlooked, had become the vantage point from which the universe revealed its truths. From there, she had seen the hidden threats, predicted the actions of the enemy, and guided her team to success. It was a small place, yet it had given her the perspective needed to protect billions of lives. Her thoughts drifted to the future. The fleet might return, stronger or more cunning. Other threats might emerge, hidden in ways humans could not yet perceive. But she was confident. Humanity's strength lay not in firepower or numbers, but in its ability to think, to observe, and to act wisely. And as long as humans used their minds, they would survive. Arya stood gazing at the stars. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and opportunities alike. She had learned that day, and in the days to come, humanity would continue to learn. Observation, reasoning, and courage, the true weapons of the human race, would guide them through the shadows and toward survival. In row 3, unnoticed by most, Arya had found her vantage point. And from that perspective, she understood the most important lesson of all, that humans, when at their best, could face any challenge, overcome any threat, and prove that intelligence and wisdom were their greatest strengths. The stars glimmered above, distant yet bright. Arya smiled faintly. Humanity had survived today, and it would continue to survive because it could think, adapt, and act. And in that quiet moment, she felt a deep certainty. The universe might test humanity in ways unimaginable, but humans would endure. They would endure because they were clever, observant, and brave. And row 3 had shown the way.